Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday Morning Blitz NFL Week 8. It is I, Jackson Roberts. It is he, Cale Clinton. Cale, I like to see you in a Syracuse shirt this week. It's a downtime for our college football program, but it is a nice reminder of where we were, how this podcast all came to be. Getting up there in episodes now, buddy, in the 70s. Always a pleasure. How was the football for you this weekend?
I had to rep Syracuse in our greatest time of need. The biggest Syracuse having a down year after taking care of their non-conference schedule. Dino is likely gone. The biggest national name we have going right now is the Giants' third string quarterback, and he didn't look great. He just seemed like a guy they plucked off the streets of Murray Hill. But we did have a good football Sunday. Other than that, let's get right into it, man.
Yeah, well, let's start here, Cale. 6 teams on bye last week, none this week. Was it football nirvana for you having 9 games in the early window, or were you like me and finding it maybe just a touch hard to concentrate? And part B to that question is, how much did the YouTube TV buffering issues affect you personally?
I've kind of conceded just generally about trying to keep up with every single game. It's a thing I try and do beginning of the year. It's the week 1 whirlwind. I've allowed myself some flyovers. I didn't totally have to tune into every minute of Jacksonville, Pittsburgh. I could pretty much dial out of Rams, Cowboys pretty quickly. Did I consume every minute of slop of Jets Giants? Of course I did. But I just allowed my Saints Colts, a little bit of a washover for me. But I just allowed myself to tune into some games. I allowed myself to tune out of some games. Keeping track with Red Zone best I could for just general tabs and watching stuff back this morning. So I've had more stressful NFL Sundays, but in terms of this week, I really thought the YouTube buffer was just me. I thought it was like, oh, I've got 2 monitors going. I'm running a third thing on my phone. I thought this was kind of just me. I did not realize this was a nationwide epidemic until I heard people talking about it on social and on pods this morning.
It was not fun. I will have to say that. I'm a little bit overplaying the whole outrage game about it, and I certainly, with DirecTV,
it's a lot better than DirecTV. I was gonna say
it was complete nonsense every year with DirecTV, where something wouldn't work, and then prices were outrageous, and the company was completely unhelpful. This one, I was like, you know what? Looks like this is just going to happen once or twice every year, and that's the price we pay as football fans. So, unfortunate that it had to come yesterday, but I kind of see it the other way. I was not pleased with having to try and follow 9 games, and I haven't quite gotten to the flyover stage yet. So
that's why you don't.
Jacksonville, Pittsburgh washed over me too, but I was like, maybe okay, I didn't want to watch Trubisky for 2 hours. So in that sense, I'm not super upset that I missed it. But that was a game between 2 potential playoff teams. And like you said, it was rarely seen, especially on Red Zone, because not much was happening in the rain with Trubisky playing.
I just kept watching the one broken tackle Christian Kirk touchdown. That's my full memory of that game because it just kept replaying on Football Night in America, on Red Zone. It was like the one touchstone I had to that game, and I'm like, all right, yeah, Jags are 6-2.
Yeah.
Steelers have a bad offense. I've learned nothing new here.
I think London saved the Jags season, which we don't even have on our schedule today. So I think the biggest, most impactful game of the day, Cale, and feel free to disagree with me, but Bengals Niners, I think, carried the most weight in the late window. Kind of a standalone game, unless you were a Seahawks or Browns fan, or a Chiefs fan watching your team die in Denver. But the interesting thing about 4 weeks ago, 1-3 Bengals, 4-0, soon to be 5-0 49ers. We were talking about these teams as miles apart. Would you be at all surprised if the Bengals are right back in the AFC Championship game at this stage? And part B, do you still like the Niners to make the NFC Championship game?
I'm going to take your first one. I wouldn't be totally unsurprised to see the Bengals back in the AFC Championship game for two reasons. One, Joe Burrow looks like he's fully back. It was almost like he was kind of making a point to scramble around. They did it against a 49ers defense that is good, but has sort of struggled in areas. I was very surprised to see the Bengals kind of like dinking and dunking it a little bit. There was some stat I'm trying to pull, I can't remember, but Burrow had like a 3.4 ADOT for like most of the game. Like was just really just working short game, getting a ton of yak off it. But we saw one of the better games out of Joe Mixon this year. Burrow scrambling around, like I said, had that 20-yard run as well. Like, I don't know. This just seems like a much more complete offense. Big Lou starting to pull his weight a little bit. Not like pull his weight, but like the defense is starting to pull their weight off the back of Big Lou. Excited about that overall. We'll get into the 49ers half. But yeah, there's no doubt in my mind the Bengals could make a playoff push, if not like a full-on run into the postseason, just because like Burrow looks good. And there is no real contender in the AFC. We've seen Buffalo absolutely implode. The Chiefs, I'm not going to write off. Like they had their Colts game from last year. Everything sort of went wrong in all three phases of the game. And they got caught off guard. The second you start hearing stats about Denver not beating Kansas City since the Obama administration, you're like, all right, that's gonna come to a head sooner rather than later. So I like if they continue to struggle, maybe, but like I don't know. Kansas City is beatable. Lions did it. Broncos have done it. And the Broncos had like one of the worst defenses of the DVOA era coming into this week. So bit of an indictment on the Chiefs, I guess. But yeah, Ravens get banged up. Bills get banged up. Dolphins are beatable. Like there is no contender right now. And if Kansas City or if Cincinnati can do something historic, more power to them.
Yeah, I think they're toying with us at this point. Yeah, I think next year they might try to go 0-5 and then see if they can still make it to the AFC Championship game because they are just and the Burrow injury was a big piece of this, but they're like an NBA team that takes the first quarter of the season to play themselves into shape. They're not at this stage concerned about early season records, and we can get into the division race now because technically they're 1.5 games behind the Ravens, but they can close that to 1 just by virtue of having one more game to play than the Ravens, and then they play them again. So there's very much a world where the Bengals could still win this division. They're also still tied for last in the division with both of the other teams in the division. So it's a fun race, and we'll get back into the back half of the AFC playoff picture in a moment. But I thought the Anarumo piece of this game might have been the biggest, and obviously Joe Burrow is neck and neck with it, but my dad, who is a Patriots fan, as we know, but has been living in San Francisco for the better part of like a half century at this point and is a way bigger Niners fan than I'll ever be as well. He's kind of on this train of like Kyle Shanahan, everyone gives him the genius credit, but gets out coached more than we maybe give it credit for. I'm not sure I agree with like the overarching thesis of that, but I definitely think the Anarumo defense was very much equal to and prepared for the things that he knew Kyle Shanahan was going to try to do against him. And maybe part of that X factor is you don't have the best left tackle in football and you don't have Yak Machine Deebo Samuel. So when you know that there are going to be more opportunities to get in on the quarterback, more long developing throws necessitated in the offense, I think they drew up a pretty perfect game plan to hold them to 10 points until there were 5 minutes left in the game.
For me, it's not a Shanahan thing. Like Shanahan's still doing well.
Yeah,
like
it's Big Lou, man.
Yeah, Big Lou's awesome. You have a lot of like very impressive performance, like Trey Hendrickson kind of just everywhere before and after the injury. Logan Wilson run around like his head with his head cut off as well.
Is Cam Taylor-Britt okay? I did not see a follow-up on that.
I haven't looked at a lot of like reporting outside of this game, so I'm not sure on legit injury reports, but yeah, one of us should look that up. I don't. San Francisco's just in this weird spot. I'd love to like wave the flag and be like, yeah, this is what Brock Purdy looks like when he doesn't have 4 all pros around him. But like, I don't know. Kittle had the biggest game by volume of his season. Ayuk looked awesome. McCaffrey looked good in stretches. Like, yeah, you have no Debo. Yeah, you have no Trent Williams. But like, I don't know. Brock Purdy, outside of 3 major turnovers and a couple big key sacks, like didn't look bad. Like, look fine. I don't know if switching to Sam Darnold is gonna make things better or worse. I want to see it, but like,
well, I think he got concussed again at the end of the game, and I'm surprised we haven't seen more about it. He got his head slammed on the turf, and I feel like it should be necessitated that Sam Darnold plays this week. Because remember, he gets his head slammed on the turf on what appears to be the last play of the game, and he's intercepted, gets called back for a defensive penalty. He takes the next snap, like wobbles backward 5 yards and gets strip sacked, and that turnover ends the game. And nobody really is talking about it in the aftermath, but I feel like we're mere moments away from another Brock Purdy has a concussion story. So hopefully not true, but I feel like at this point we should have a week of Darnold anyway, just to reset the concussion clock.
Yeah, it's probably for the best. And, you know, maybe we'll see something new there, but I don't know. This doesn't feel like the most complete team. It feels like the first time in a while the first time this season really that I've been worried about San Francisco's defense. Kind of got torched like across the board, 400 combined yards for the Bengals. One of the Bengals' biggest rushing days on the season as well. Like I said, ton of Joe Burrow scrambling. Good day from Joe Mixon. Just, I don't know. Like, you have a lot of defensive turnover. Surprisingly, you don't lose Steve Wilkes not Steve Wilkes. Oh my god, now I'm blanking on the Texans head coach. You don't blank on lose out on D'Amico Ryans and get away from that scot-free. There's still going to be some minor adjustments. Stephen Ruiz on the Ringer pod was pointing out how surprisingly ineffective San Francisco is against just pretty simple inside zone run schemes. Yeah, like it feels so textbook. It feels like something you've got to be able to address, and you can't just get simply beaten by that. I'm not going to like totally go doomer on them and write them off for the rest of the season, but it's, you know, this is a wake-up call. It's not great, and it again kind of reaffirms that there are no runaway contenders at this point of the season, which is a bit surprising. But if San Francisco is one of them, like if you think they're going to be one of the Super Bowl teams, like I have most of the season, you know, you're now a half game back from Seattle. Like you're now out of the running, out of contention. You're getting into some hot water. You've lost 3 straight. What's the correction here? How are you going to fix this?
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that I think most places Seattle still plus 250, plus 300 to win the division. It kind of shows the collective faith that everyone has in the talent in San Francisco. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised because I would probably still pick San Francisco. But you're right. Like last week was supposed to be the rebound week. Looked like a great rebound spot, you know, with an extra day's rest going against a Minnesota team that only had 2 wins. Kind of just got their asses handed to them in Minnesota. And then this week, you can argue it was a pretty darn good spot for the Bengals coming off their bye. Niners on a short week, but the Niners still had, I think, an 11-game home winning streak dating back 370 plus days. So It should have been a nice cleanup week, but instead they pretty much got their asses handed to them. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's, what's the response from here? I think if and when Trent Williams and Debo are back is going to play a big part in that. And we'll watch the news for Brock Purdy stuff this week. But it's certainly, I mean, if you were to ask me 2 weeks ago, Cowboys or 49ers, who's more likely to be in the NFC Championship game, we're laughing. But I think it's a legitimate question now. And we can kind of talk about the Cowboys a little bit because they just murdered the Rams yesterday. I think them versus San Francisco is now again the discussion, and the Eagles are kind of riding above the fray, sitting pretty at 7-1.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Cowboys. I don't know. San Francisco, just to put a bow on it, bye couldn't come at a better time. They've still got a top 10 remaining schedule by DVOA, 6th by FTN's numbers, but like it's kind of put up or shut up time. If you could figure out this offense, if you can make some adjustments with the defense, it's been the third straight week you've scored just 17 points. It's the third straight week that you've been outscored by, on paper, an inferior offense to what you are. You're kind of falling apart at the seams. And when you start to look at if you're going to play schedule game, like you've had pretty consistent variance. So like you're just outside top 10 on variance of play, but your wins right now are Steelers, Rams, Giants, Cards, and Cowboys. And the Cowboys was a throttling. Like you've got some really major wins in there, but like, what's your competition at this point? Like, we'll see. We'll see how they put it together. They've got a tough stretch coming down, but let's talk about this Cowboys team, Jackson, because I'm still not I'm not jumping out of my seat for this game. Like I'm not losing my mind about the Cowboys beating the Rams, if only because in all these blowout games that they've had, so much of it is set up by their defense. Like you get you obviously get a good stretch at the beginning. Cowboys open up, big touchdown drive, long drive, moving pretty consistently. Rams answer back the field goal. Cowboys counter that. Then you've got the Deron Bland pick 6. And he's been eating off of just small little out route fades to the sideline where he just is really good at jumping that route and taking it back where no one else is there for a touchdown. Rams get a safety right after that. And by that point, like Cowboys get the ball back after the safety. They score another touchdown. It's 26-3. The game's over. Like defense has been the massive, massive swinging point of all of these games. And it's like, you go back to that Giants game. It's a fumble / pick 6. It's a block field goal return for a touchdown. It's in the Jets game where you're intercepting Zach Wilson 4 times. Patriots game, you have another pick 6 and a fumble 6 in there. It's like you're getting all of these massive, massive swings off defensive play. And the offenses are playing terribly, but it's not asked to like really win games and put foot on gas. Like you're kind of just playing. Mike McCarthy hasn't been asked to do too much. And like, you could win a Super Bowl off of defense, and you could win a Super Bowl off of explosive plays and like really forcing an offense into bad situations. But it's not like this doesn't feel like a holistic team as of yet.
I can get on board with that. I do think that aside from those 2 games, and maybe this is the kryptonite of the Dallas defense, is it seems like if you pick a specific gap or pick a specific linebacker you want to run it at, you can run on them. But at the same time, if their pass rush has any opportunity to get a push early, late, whatever, they only get stronger as the game goes on. And obviously Micah Parsons is the biggest X factor in that. They've really shut down most of the teams they've played, and the teams they haven't shut down have scored 40 on them. So it's an interesting little like side by side there of which Cowboys performance are you getting on any given week. But I do think like of the contending teams, I'm not seeing one whose defense I trust more at this stage. They're top 3, maybe top 2 for a reason, both by efficiency metrics and just the eye test. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up from this game was there were maybe 2 or 3 receivers at most that looked better than CeeDee Lamb on any field anywhere yesterday. And Dak still has the one ugly pick in him at every point during the game. But if he's got, the 2 touchdown, 180-yard connection with CeeDee Lamb cooking every week, that changes the way I think about this team, because they really had the more explosive offense in this game, and it wasn't, it didn't seem like a fluke. It seemed like every drive they were just pushing it down the field as much as they needed to. So I like them a lot more than I did a couple weeks ago, mostly because of the CeeDee Lamb piece.
Listen, I get it. It should, like, there's obviously effectiveness on this offense. It's just, I don't know. Tony Pollard doesn't look like Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be awesome. He's just been okay.
No, and like the Dak to CeeDee connection's obviously awesome. But you go back and you look at EPA numbers. I guess everyone's like Jake Ferguson, really good red zone target, but it's mostly just CD, and like we finally get some good stuff out of Brandon Cooks this game, like by EPA per play, because a third of his catches went for touchdowns, and one of them was a pretty long play. But it's like, I don't know, when CD is accounting for more than half of your passing offense, it gets like you're pretty one note. You're just a little one dimensional. I'm down for more Kevontae Turpin though. Throw me some more just weirdo, like just take everything out. Just really let it all out, let it loose. Just wish McCarthy had a little bit more in his bag. Like I think you watch, we're not really going to touch on this game, but you watch LA play the Bears last night, and you've got Kellen Moore almost doing like too cute stuff. Like there was one like double reverse that they had going that could have been a pass, but whoever was carrying it ends up only running it for like a 3-yard gain on 1st and 10. Like it was a lot of hullabaloo for 3 yards, like a non-successful play. But I appreciate you at least trying it. Like Mike McCarthy's offense is just the exact opposite, where it's so boring and so pedestrian, and there's really no creativity to it, with success regardless. But you just wish there was a little bit more there. You just wish there was a little extra sprinkle of something. This is boiled chicken for an offense. There's not a lot going on here. It's nutritious.
That makes it sound way worse than it is.
It's nutritious. It's bodybuilders are gonna love it. People just obsessed with like just lean raw macros. But like if you're looking for a little flavor, you're looking for a little excitement, it's not gonna do anything for you.
I mean, we can't even give them like roasted chicken. They're just
that's got flavor. You're putting garlic on that. You're making some rosemary. Like
there's so many more chickens better than roasted. I don't know, whatever. No more chicken analogies. Let's get away from the Cowboys. Niners talk more about losers. So the Niners were the original bridge into this topic. Yesterday felt like a day where a lot of teams took significant hits, some in the loss column, some in the injury column, some in the morale column. So let's just lay them out here. I laid out 4, and then Kale, according to him, had a wild card answer of some kind. So, was the biggest loser yesterday the Chiefs? Pretty straightforward. They lost. They didn't score 10 points against a team that we saw give up 70 this season. Was it Kirk Cousins tearing his ACL when he was suddenly looking like he was playing the best football of his career? Was it the Giants, just because the Giants lost in some of the more horrific fashion we've seen? Desmond Ridder himself for finally getting benched, giving way to Taylor Heineke. So overall, who is leaving week 8 the saddest?
I'm going to start by refuting all of these, if you don't mind.
Oh, wow.
We started with the Chiefs. Chiefs had their Colts game. I'm not totally complaining about that. It's a good wake-up call for them. You lose in all 3 phases of the game. You make mistakes pretty much everywhere. I'll take that loss. Like, you just got to make that work. Kirk, very upsetting, but long-term, probably good for the team. you're like a little too far away from like really bottoming out, especially by actually winning that game. You throw a little bit of wrench into long-term plans, but Kirk's in a contract year. You rip the Band-Aid off of any illusions that this era had anything left in it, and you have the ability to full-on sell. You can really just say goodbye. You can,
What are they selling in the next 2 days?
Daniil Hunter. You can give up on any of these older defensive guys. The safety Harrison, not Harrison Bryant.
That's Harrison Smith. The other Harrison is Phillips on the D line, who
thank you
might also be a candidate. I don't know.
But like you got a lot of these defensive pieces. Not really flipping any of the running backs at this point, but like you can move on from some of these defensive guys, pick up some day 2s, day 3s, more likely day 3s, and figure something out there. Just accrue some kind of assets to, give younger guys a little bit more shine. Someone really wants to blow the doors off and trade for an injured Justin Jefferson, go for it. But like it just removes any illusions that this was a competitive team. It sucks to see Kirk go. You probably wanted to maybe flip him after he was doing well. Who knows? But I don't think so. Giants, again, no illusions here. You were on your third string quarterback. It's a tough loss. Defense is playing well. You've got a bad offensive line. Sucks, but like, I don't know. I think you can kind of write that one off. I've got a lot of Giants friends who are like, you're never rooting for any loss and you want to care about the team, but like you remove the emotion out of it. So I think a lot of Giants fans at this point are pretty dead inside anyway. Desmond Ridder, the Falcons. Like, yeah, arguably Desmond Ridder got benched too late. Like Heineke mounted a comeback, but you were already 11 in the hole. Net difference when Heineke was in. Pretty solid. I've got some things to say about Will Levis later on in this podcast. I guess probably next segment before anything. But yeah, like Falcons have one of the easiest schedules in football remaining. Taylor Heineke, I get, is a known quantity. Desmond Ritter's made way too many mistakes and is way too inconsistent for this team that is pretty likely a playoff team to actually like, I don't know. I don't think it's worth riding with Ritter at this point. I think Heineke, like, just make what you have with this team and try and find a veteran long-term option in the offseason.
Which is why Desmond Ridder the loser, not Falcons the loser.
I'm like, Desmond Ritter's not sad. Like, he's if someone wants to develop him, go for it. I think he's still got some stuff to learn. I don't think he's like totally lost. But I also wanted to just keep this to teams, Jackson. Why single out one man? I'm not calling for anyone's job here. But I've refuted all your answers, and I have one for my own. It's got to be the Cleveland Browns, Jackson.
Interesting.
It has to be the Cleveland Browns because you recognize that you have this pretty special, historic defense. And there were still stretches like, yeah, Cleveland isn't blowing the doors off teams anymore. Like, it's still very much a consistent game, but you get 2 picks off of Geno Smith. You get 2 additional forced fumbles in there. You're holding teams down pretty consistently. And you just don't have a quarterback, man. Like, you just do not have a quarterback to back things up. And you know that Deshaun Watson is not good enough to carry this team around. Geno Smith and PJ Walker are both sitting at like near 0 EPA per play in this game. You are keeping the Seattle Seahawks to like a pretty low success rate, especially on late downs. 38% success rate on late downs. Like, you've got to be able to handle this team. And yeah, you let up like a late point here and there, but like, for how many times the offense has put you in the hole this season, it's a problem. you've got to have it. They feel like the Jets of last year, where the defense is just so good, and the defense for the Browns right now is even better than the 2022 Jets defense. But it's just a similar situation where the defense is so good. The skill position players, are also very good. Like Kareem Hunt has been pretty transcendent for this Browns rushing attack. You're even seeing Pierre Strong start to outperform Jerome Ford in little bits and bursts there. Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore and David Njoku are real solid pass catching options. And if you just had a league average quarterback, if you just had someone like net zero who isn't going to completely blow it in late game situations, you're a playoff team, and you arguably are a playoff contender because you know how good this defense and how game changing this defense can be in stretches. Like it's got to be them. It just has to be for me.
I don't hate that answer. I also felt like in a weird way we learned nothing about the Browns this week that we didn't already know before. They spent $250 million on a quarterback who was a terrible human being, but they thought they were at least getting a good quarterback. He was terrible when he played, and now he's borderline. Like,
I was just sitting out.
The nature of his baseball injury. Like if he was a pitcher, he would miss, X amount of time, 2 to 4 months, whatever. I mean, it's inherently different. So let's not compare it to throwing a baseball and throwing a football. And it's one of the weirder things going in the sport right now. His agent is fighting with people online. And I think at this point, it's just you made your deal with the devil and you got to carry this thing to term, and it's going to be ugly pretty much no matter what. Yeah, I find it like, 100% fair to call them the biggest losers of the week. And yet I could also argue that they're, right exactly where they put themselves. They made their bed. Now they're just lying in it.
I mean, confirmation still hurts, like living in denial is always sweeter. Like you'd rather just be like, hey, we like, who knows? We could be better without Watson, but like just constantly confirming it and blowing the lead in the way you did is just tough. The consolation loser is the Packers. I just think them. I almost said them, and then I just kept thinking about it, and it was the Browns felt just sadder in general because I don't know. I don't think the Packers needed this high of expectations, but Jordan Love's just having some real bad stretches. Aaron Jones is really beating himself up over certain plays. He was emotional in the locker room after the game. There's not a single Packers receiver outside of like a couple big Jaden Reed plays that is really doing anything important. And this is a weak Vikings team that's been banged up, and with the quarterback getting his first NFL appearance down the stretch. I know Kirk was playing great, but like, I don't know. Like this is a tough way for the Packers to kind of like swallow the pill that we are not good. And
yeah, I mean, it was over by the Jaron Hall time, but yeah, they're fully bottom 5. I totally agree with that. I think they're bottom 5, and they could be, tank watch bottom 3-ish by the end of the season.
They've got 2 wins. They're pretty much there.
Yeah, I mean, they're not catching Arizona or Carolina in my eyes, but other than that, I think pretty much any pick for them is fair game. So
I think they'll have they're another team with a bottom like 6. I think they've got like the 6 easiest schedule by DVOA. So there's definitely some room for improvement, and we'll see how they handle the rest of their bye. But I don't know. It's a nice development season for them. I think they have a chance to surge on the back end and maybe not be total dog.
I mean, is it a development season in the sense of like?
I'm not saying for Jordan Love. I'm saying for one of the youngest receiving cores in the league, and there's some like expectations where you didn't expect to be without David Bakhtiari. You expected to have a really good offensive line. You expected the defense to perform better, and the defense just kind of hasn't, and is kind of as bad as they were last season, which most people thought was kind of like, oh, they were good in 21. This is an underperformance. 21 now looks like a bit of an overperformance, and this is kind of the baseline of their play. So you've got like hard reset on expectations, but I call it a development season because especially in the receiving core, you've got, two second-year receivers, a couple rookie receivers, and a rookie tight end, and a first-year quarterback that you've kind of extended an olive branch to in terms of what your development is there. Let's see where things go. Let's just see what you have. It's the same thing I had said about the Patriots last weekend. Just see what you've got. Look at your just cabinet of wares. See fully how you can reinvent this offense. You're kind of stuck long term with this running back group, the way contracts are structured there, but they're solid if you've got a good offensive line. And let's I don't know, just take stock and ride in the offseason. Try and get something going.
Yeah. Well, the Love thing, I mean, if you're going to move on from him after this season, that has to be one of the biggest wastes of a first round pick in the history of ever. And if you don't move on from him after this season, then I think you're going to need to see a lot for the rest of this year, and you're still going to need to see a lot more growth next year. But if you look back at that 2020 first round, the Packers coming off an NFC title game appearance and bound for another one, they took a friggin' quarterback when they had Aaron Rodgers, coming off an MVP season, or I guess he was about to head into back-to-back.
Yeah, he didn't have it yet, and he was actually coming off
it was
in the Packers defense was coming off a bad stretch. Was coming off a stretch of pretty poor play.
Yeah. But they'd made the NFC Championship game the year before, which means they were, ostensibly one of the 4 best teams in football and had all these obvious glaring needs. And chiefly among them was pretty much receiver not named Devontae Adams. Instead, they take a quarterback. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named T. Higgins, Kale, but he was available in that draft, drafted 7 picks later. So maybe that could have helped him out. Or many other defensive players, or maybe even just Jonathan Taylor was picked in the second round, that one, Kyle Duggar. So many options besides taking a quarterback behind Rodgers to have him sit for 3 years and then be bad. There's no other way to say it. He's been bad so far, and he's no spring chicken. He's not Bryce Young, where you're saying, let's give this guy lots of time to develop. This has got to be the year for Jordan Love because he's 25, 26 already.
I'm not calling Jordan Love the worst quarterback acquisition when the Niners traded up for Trey Lance. So
okay, that's fair. The next year, but yes.
I'm just not.
Understood. But they shot their shot on that one. Anyway, my biggest loser of the week is Desmond Ridder. Sorry to be that guy, but
I get it.
So bad. And, injured, they can say they were holding them out for concussion protocol, but this is a team that is good enough to be in the playoffs, probably still will be, ? And they got speed bagged by a first-time rookie quarterback. Ridder was the one that looked like a first-time rookie quarterback. And now, it's still all right in front of you. Do the Aaron Boone. It's all right in front of us. And the only question is can you turn the team back over to this guy? It's back to the 2022 Jet. It's the analogy of say Heineke gets hurt or Heineke is bad. Can the morale of what is otherwise a good roster handle handing the team back to Desmond Ridder? Because he's just a fumble machine. I think it's 8 weeks for them. He's got 13 turnovers. Can't win that way.
Can't win that way. You cannot win that way. I am very curious to see what they end up doing because it doesn't seem like this was a performance-based benching. It like you said, seemed like an injury-based benching. But Taylor Heineke is just so truly the 23rd best quarterback in football, 25th best quarterback in football. His ceiling is 21st. There's no way he can ever be a top 20 quarterback, but he does just enough to keep a team afloat.
And he does it in an interesting way. He's modern day Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's never going to be boring PJ Walker football with Taylor Heineke. He's going to try to make plays.
I guess, but like I don't know. He did better than Carson Wentz last year. He's like succeeded Ryan Fitzpatrick very well when he was in Washington that one season where like it was okay, we're gonna do Heineke. Uh okay, Heineke, that was fine, but we're gonna do Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick gets like massively concussed week one and retires. Okay, Heineke, I guess you're good. Uh yeah, but like
Stupid.
Falcons are just in too good of a position to allow Ritter to do this. Like and you've got too many high stakes deals in place right now where you've got a top 5 first round pick at tight end, wide receiver, and running back. And like the Bijan usage has been weird. I still like Algier too, like as a compliment piece there, but like I don't know. You get too much crap going on. Like you've got too many good pieces, and you haven't seen Ritter be good. And Heineke like almost dug you out of that hole. He came in down 11 and he left the game down 6. Like you will allow one less touchdown and you figure one thing out. And Heineke was driving. That Van Jefferson drop was crippling. Like toward the end of the game. It's just real tough. I don't know. I'd like to imagine that Atlanta turns the keys over and just says like, all right, we're gonna figure out how far we can get with just league average quarterback play. Desmond's not the guy. Do we need to waste our time on development? Whatever.
Yeah. For a while there, it was almost like, should we call it like the poor man's version of Brock Purdy? Because he's clearly worse than Brock Purdy, but they were winning all of his home games. And there was this whole momentum of Desmond Ritter's just a winner. I think that momentum is fully dead, and I think it's fully time to move on. Also, like one of the worst clipboard quarterbacks I've seen, historically speaking, like looked so distressed holding a clipboard in his hands. And also just like kind of an interesting looking guy, like bigger head than his body seems to allow. So I don't know. I don't really want clipboard shots of Desmond Ridder the rest of the way, but it's better than shots of Desmond Ridder throwing the ball right to the defense. I think we've all sort of seen the light on moving on in Atlanta. But as we also said, they are a very, very likely / feasible candidate for one of the final playoff teams in the NFC. So let's do this segment now, and then we can move on to rookie quarterback play. But yesterday, I couldn't find, and this is part of the problem with playoff expansion in the last 5 years or so, is I couldn't seem to find the 7 playoff teams in each conference. And we'll start with the NFC because I only have 5 right now, and I don't know where we go from there. So San Francisco and Seattle, very much locks for me. Dallas, Philly, and Detroit. Those are my 5. Find me 2 more playoff teams, Kel. I don't know who they are.
For starting NFC, someone's coming out of the NFC South, and arguably 2 teams are coming out of the NFC South.
Yeah.
I don't get the Saints. I don't get the Saints at all. It's head scratching to me that the Colts just keep getting into crazy shootouts with teams with Gardner Minshew at the helm. And it kind of happened last year where he was the backup for the Eagles and like went in a bad game, went toe to toe with the Cowboys and just kind of like slung it out with them. But it was like a 40-point game. One of their games is a big blowout. I forget if it was the Cowboys or if they played the Saints late. But regardless, if their offense looks figured out, it might be them. If the Falcons go with Taylor Heineke, it could be them. You've got to put LA in that conversation. Just trying to stay afloat there with this very good quarterback unit and like just strong offense overall, but you lose one of your big offensive pieces in Kyron Williams and everything kind of goes down. Defense is looking a little sparse, but like if I'm just going off ease of schedule, I'm saying Falcons feel like the lock. They feel like the most complete team, although losing Grady Jarrett for the season with that torn ACL definitely hurts. But like they've still got a really strong defense. They've still got such an elite offensive core and just a strong offensive line that I kind of just give it up to them a little bit. And like I almost really want to go with 2 NFC South teams because I think that's just how it's going to work. I think it's just down the stretch, the Saints have the 32nd schedule, easiest schedule by DVOA. Falcons have the 30th, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the 26th. Like, that's going to amass a ton of wins. Like, it's just going to. LA's got a league average schedule, and I'd consider them better than any of those 3 teams. But, like, I still think it's like Saints Falcons, or I think it's Falcons Bucks. I don't know. It sucks. Yeah, it's a bad reality. But someone's gonna win from that division.
The roadmap is still there for the Bucks, as sad as it is to say, because they smoked the Saints in New Orleans the first time they played them. So it almost doesn't matter how the Bucks play against really anybody else on their schedule. And by the way, they still have both of their Panthers games. They still have a Packers game in there. They play the Colts. They play the Titans and Texans. Like, really, besides at 49ers and against the Jaguars, there are no not winnable games for the Bucks. So as much as I want to write the Bucks off, I can't. And I do think it's 2 NFC South teams, and I guess I'll pick the 2 that are at the top. But and I think it's going to be one of those, like, one's 9-8, the other's 8-9, and they're both going to get whomped in week 1 of the playoffs. So it confounds a little bit, but you're right. Like, I can't find the closest teams outside of those 3 are the Commanders and Rams. Seen enough of the Commanders, and they played great yesterday, but I've still seen Sam Howell take 41 sacks in 8 games. So not a lot of confidence in them. And then Rams.
Jackson. You only had 1 yesterday.
Yeah, so it was historic. It was my head scratcher last week. I guess they listened to the show and they fixed it up a little bit. So I guess positive vibes, even though they lost.
Progress.
Really important loss. And then the Rams, by the way, I feel like Matthew Stafford's body is breaking more and more every week because, he comes out with a thumb injury yesterday, but when I'm watching, I'm seeing plays where he's getting crunched from behind and his arm is bending 3 different directions. And we already know about the history with like neck injuries, shoulder injuries, rib injuries. Like, I'd be surprised if he makes it through the rest of the season. And that stinks to say because a healthy Matthew Stafford is a joy to watch. But based on that, I think it has to be 2 South teams. And that's where I'm leaning is Falcons and Saints. AFC is a little different because we just talked about the Bengals being back into it. I'm actually going to put them in, but you can talk me out of it if you want. So that pretty much leaves us with 1 team if we're counting Ravens and Bengals in, Bills and Dolphins in, which if you want to talk me out of the Bills, you can also do that. Jags in and Chiefs in, especially if you're not concerned after yesterday. So find me a 7th playoff team in the AFC.
Jackson, heads or tails?
We like this game. Heads won the Patriots a Super Bowl, so I'm going to take heads.
Cleveland Browns. They figure it out without a quarterback, and they just make something happen because everyone else on that team is too good. I think they're buyers at the deadline. I think they've just got to add something, man. They're so close. They're so close. Like if it's adding some additional elite running back potential, if it's I don't know how you make that defense better because you seem to have guys everywhere, and I don't think the defense is what needs to be touched here. But if you want to make it more unstoppable, go for it. You just need something, man. I love the sicko reality where the Browns flip assets to get Jacoby Brissett back, and he just balls out for this team. Just right the wrong that you made, Cleveland. Just go, Jacoby. But Jackson, the tails was New York Jets. The tails was finding a reality where the New York Jets have just a couple more games where Zach Wilson is able to like just hold it together by the thinnest of margins, and then Aaron Rodgers makes one of the most miraculous health comebacks of all time to
During the
lead
regular
team in the
season?
playoffs. Yes, like by Thanksgiving.
Yeah, better do copious amounts of DMT, which he probably is already doing. So
someone brought it up on Twitter. I think it was Steve Palazzolo that the most miraculous injury turnaround in NFL history is Jerry Rice tearing his ACL week 1 and returning by week 16. And this would probably be up there with that for one of the biggest turnarounds ever. And I think it's not completely unlikely. I think it's kind of possible. Like, he's throwing the ball around, man. Like he's jumping around, he's doing things on a torn Achilles that I've never seen anyone else do. And I like if Burrow looks that healthy after a near calf Achilles injury 7 weeks in, how effective are dolphin sex noises at fully healing a man? Like, it's time to ask the hard hitting question.
Yeah, we're fixing to find out, is what it sounds like.
But I say all that to say that if we're including the Cincinnati Bengals as a shoe-in, like, I don't have faith in the Pittsburgh Steelers to figure this out. Mike Tomlin's just a sicko, and he's just going to win as many games as he can with the grossest offense possible.
Mm-hmm.
But if Mitch Trubisky, who is top 5 all time in Chicago Bears passing yards, I will remind our audience, if he's going to be the guy to right the ship, fine. Like, Mitch Trubisky led the Bears to Chicago or to the playoffs multiple times. If he can do it at Pittsburgh, more power to him, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, that's a, under the radar, but potentially historic drive-by in our show's history to Chicago Bears fans who are just sitting there, smiling, laughing along with our discussion of, bad teams that are somehow going to make the playoffs and then just getting shot right in the
dude, that's a credit to them. They're second all time in passing yards. Sid Luckman retired in 1952.
Mm-hmm.
This is about as modern gets. These are the apex of football. 100 years.
Yeah.
100 years.
Go watch hockey, Chicago fan. Go watch Connor Bedard. This is rough. The Tyson Bagent experiment, sadly, not bearing as much fruit in week 2 as it did in week 1. But I am not writing off the Steelers yet, Gil. Yesterday was following the perfect Steelers script until Kenny Pickett got hurt, because they were absolutely still within striking distance. They look terrible the entire first half. Really, it's usually the first 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden they just engineer a game-winning drive out of absolutely nothing. They still have as much receiving talent as anybody in that lower end of the AFC playoff picture. And Pickett doesn't make use of it for the first 3 quarters, but then he just kind of figures it out. The running backs have looked a little better of late too. The offense is so gross, but it's just enough to be carried by the defense when Pickett is playing. So if Pickett is going to be playing, and they play the Thursday game this week, so his status is up in the air, which is, that's big iffy for them. But they are also playing a quarterback with 1 game of experience, so we'll see how much credit we're really giving Will Levis after week 2. But then they've still got a Packers game, they've still got a Cardinals game, Colts. There's Patriots. There's still wins to be picked up there. So as much as it may be gross, I just can't quit the Pittsburgh Steelers. I still like them in this barren wasteland of 7th playoff teams in the AFC.
Can we talk about that rookie class just quick?
You brought up to.
Yeah, let's
the whole of the rookie class, because let's rewind to a week ago. We had CJ Stroud as, the golden boy, leading the 3-3 Houston Texans, the only team with a rookie quarterback anywhere near playoff position. You had Anthony Richardson, whose team was also near playoff position, but he was done for the season. Shoulder injury, shoulder surgery forthcoming. Had some flashes, but also only played 1 full game this year. we had Bryce Young on the 0-6 Carolina Panthers, one of the lowest rated passers and lowest volume passers in the league so far this year. And we had Will Levis, who hadn't played a snap yet. Flash forward to a week later, Bryce Young's team beats CJ Stroud's team. First win of his career. Stroud has, flashes in that game, but also I think, more of the growing pains than I think we thought we'd see at this stage. And Young, delivers a win. Also growing pains, delivers a win. He was the higher drafted guy. Richardson gets his shoulder surgery. He's still done for the year. And Will Levis comes in and plays the best game any of them have played so far. So, where are we at with these four? Like, if you're going to give them a grade, is Stroud still the slam dunk A out of the group, or any of them getting A's? Where's your head at with the four main rookie quarterbacks from this year's last draft?
Okay. Do you want to go in just the order they were drafted?
I want to go in the order. Like, I think it's more, 1 through 4. Who are you most confident? Who are you least confident in moving forward?
Still Stroud 1. Listen, I get it. It's the first genuine, like, what feels like big challenge of his career, but he's a quarterback who just puts the ball in mistake situations so infrequently. He's really good at just managing the game, spreading the ball out. His reads are awesome. His throws are on point. He just does he does a lot really well. Derek Klassen does a lot of QB charting. Used to be an NFL writer. Obsessed with him, and I've between him and the JT O'Sullivan tape, I've really liked what I've seen out of CJ Stroud. I don't hold yesterday against him at all. Panthers D is very solid. I'm fine with that. Bryce. He's not my 2, but I want to just talk about him because this is the team he played. He's my 3. But this is the first game where Bryce kind of took it upon himself to try and make something happen. You still don't you obviously still don't have the offensive line. That's not coming anytime soon. Adam Thielen is still your only weapon. But you're down 7-0. Your back is against the wall. And you're stepping up in the pocket. The touchdown drive that they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh no, that's a Hubbard run. Had all but 2 of the 7 of the 9 plays were Bryce Young dropbacks. They're trusting him enough to put the game in his hands. The field goal drive that they had to seal the game, again, putting the ball in Bryce Young's hands. He doesn't have any protection. He's got 33-year-old Adam Thielen to try and help him out. And that's really it. And he's doing okay. I'm willing to give him a pass, and I'm willing to say that this isn't a total write-off of the 2 guys taken behind you are better. I say 2 guys because Anthony Richardson's my 2. There's still some obvious qualms, obvious flaws in his game. He throws to one side more than the other. He still iffy as a passer in terms of accuracy in general. But I've liked what I've seen thus far. I'm very disappointed that he's torn his rotator cuff and he cannot play. Had to get shoulder surgery. I forget if it was torn rotator cuff or not. I'm blanking, but I'm super optimistic with what I've seen from him, and I'm convinced that when the Colts get more weapons, Richardson can ball. Levis Jackson is getting an incomplete for me. I don't count this win for him. I don't listen, Jackson. Will Levis went 4 for 10 on passes of at least 10 yards, A-dot. He also went.
How about those 4 though?
He went for 3 for 3 on passes of at least 40 yards. I don't count those. Like you can be a deep ball merchant. The OPI on one of those DeAndre Hopkins touchdowns was insane. I'm not a big throw the flag guy. I'm usually a let him play guy. You gotta call that. That was bad. But the vast majority of that game is just working underneath stuff. Like he's not throwing a ton. Like it's so all or nothing that I'm like, all right, play a normal game. Don't get away with a couple deep shots because Atlanta thinks you're not going to take deep shots because you're a rookie. If the tape's out there, they're going to play you differently. This is winning because you don't know what the quarterback is. I like his arm. I like his ability to run around a bit. But, I don't know. If I'm grading all these Strouds an A, I'm giving Bryce Young, a B minus. I'm understanding that he doesn't have the best circumstances around him, but there's also been some major flaws and concerns about his size and some of his ability to play. But, did have some, crazy break a tackle, spin out of it, get the ball out real quick, stuff out of college highlights. I think Anthony Richardson's a B+ / incomplete, just because of the shortened season. I'm giving Will Levis a sticker. When you were in school and you didn't the assignment wasn't big enough for a grade, so you kind of just got a sticker. I'm giving Will Levis a sticker.
It's a nice sticker, though.
It's sparkly. It's got sequins on it for sure.
I'm gonna come on to him last. Yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement on I think we're in agreement on CJ Stroud being the one. And I think the interesting thing with him is his games kind of all follow different archetypes. Some weeks he's high yards per attempt, but low completion percentage. This week he was more high completion percentage, low yards per attempt. But I think he's adaptable, and the accuracy is always going to stand out. And he's pretty turnover averse, which is, rare to find in today's NFL from what we've seen this year. So even though I'm not maybe he's an A- instead of an A long-term, but I'm still very willing to put him at the top. Richardson is the one where it's not that I disagree with you, but I'm more concerned about the long-term, potential injury concerns. He could be Joel Embiid. He could be Greg Oden. I don't know yet. He's an obvious talent, but every game I've seen of him, he's gotten hurt in that game. So I don't know what to make of that because he might just be too athletic for his own body, too physical.
You could be Cam Newton or you could be Cam Newton.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. So with that in mind, I'll actually put Young in terms of future confidence. I'll put Young a little bit ahead of him just because I feel what I've seen hasn't been great, but I've also seen the college stuff. And, as much as you don't want to look at college quarterbacking and say this is how they're going to translate to the NFL, he basically just looked like, if somebody put a little shrinking solution on Joe Burrow for most of his college tape. So I'm gonna roll with Bryce continuing to figure it out in the NFL, and maybe at some point he has an offensive line that isn't 5 traffic cones in front of him. So I'm not abandoning hope there. I actually had a lot of hope just for, if he can figure out a way to reinvigorate Adam Thielen, which I guess Andy Dalton kind of started that trend in week 3. But I feel like that's only going to continue to grow with actual good talent around him, both on the line and in the passing game. And then Levis, I'm going to give my first game ball today. Because guess what, Cal? There are not a lot of quarterbacks who make plays that inspire me anymore. And those 4 touchdowns, specifically the 3 deep ones, got to hand it to him. A lot of fun. Do I have future confidence in Will Levis? Not particularly. I'm kind of like you. I'd still put him 4th in the class, but I'm excited to watch him this Thursday. That wasn't not something I was going to say about a Tannehill Pickett matchup. Certainly not something I was going to say about a Malik Willis Pickett matchup. I'm excited to watch Will Levis on Thursday. I have no idea how it's going to go. He could be my number 2 on this list behind Stroud by the end of this week, or it could be, oh yeah, this is why he fell to the second round. He's, a very incomplete, comprehensive talent at the quarterback position. So this is based on nothing to do with the future, but to see a quarterback slinging it in, by the way, those gorgeous Houston Oilers uniforms yesterday, the reason I have donned this particular hat, it was just refreshing. I thought I'll admit it, I started the Falcons defense in fantasy yesterday. I thought Will Levis was going to take 6 sacks and throw 2 picks. None of that happened. There was certainly shaky stuff to point out between the highlight plays, but the highlight plays alone, more than enough for me to give Willie Mayo his first game ball.
Listen, it's a 4 touchdown, 0 interception game with a 6.6% CPOE. Like, you got to hand it to him.
Can I give you some context on that, Cale? There have been 2 other quarterbacks in the history of the NFL who have thrown for 4 touchdowns in their first start ever. They are Hall of Famer Fran Tarkenton and Marcus Mariota. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, my offensive game ball. A shout out to AJ Brown.
That's just every week at this point.
Yeah, looks like the most athletic human being on earth. 6 straight games, NFL record for at least 125 receiving yards.
Staggering.
Yeah, you could also do with Tyreek Hill. He hit 1,000 yards before Halloween.
Could do that every week.
Do that every week. I'm going to go Joe Burrow, though. I'm going to give it a Joe Burrow. Just looking healthy, just running around, making good throws against a strong 49ers secondary. Another, only missed 4 passes, 283, 3-0, or 3-0 TD interception ratio. Took a few sacks. It's going to happen, but there's, like you said, very few things inspire you. There's not many NFL singular players that can completely flip a narrative around for me like Joe Burrow can with the Cincinnati Bengals. I kind of thought they were dead in the water. I'd written this whole season at the beginning of the year, how many times does a top 5 offensive DVOA team from the year before open their next season with a single game offensive DVOA of negative 30% or worse? And how often, it's a coin flip. They make the playoffs. It's it's less than 70% of the time, or less than 50% of the time they make they end up being a top 5 offense again. So few teams make the playoffs when they start 1-3. There's so many improbable factors that are being factored into this Bengals run, but games like that from Joe Burrow, inspire confidence. Get the juices going. This looks like a good football team again, and arriving just in time to make the AFC playoffs picture even more interesting than it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you're there are a couple things on Burrow that I have. One, Steven Ruiz, who we shouted out earlier in the pod, has been taking many victory laps on his Brock Purdy, just overall not caving to this early success of Brock Purdy, still having him ranked in the 20s of his weekly quarterback rankings. He dropped Joe Burrow to 11th, and he had him ranked 3rd out of his draft class of Herbert, then Tua, and then he had Joe Burrow. So as somebody who's always been on the Joe Burrow is still QB1 from that draft, and I don't think it's particularly that up for discussion. Yesterday was this big sigh, this big moment of vindication for me, because you're right. I hadn't really seen it this year, but at the same time, it was totally excusable from injury to him, injury to T. Higgins, all this other stuff going on around him. But yesterday was just a nice reminder. They're bad when Burrow is hurt early in the season, or if just things get out of sync for them. Their offensive bad can be as bad as anybody's. But yesterday it pretty much seemed like they were going to score on every drive, even if McPherson missed the field goal, the drive stalled, whatever. They moved the ball as well as I saw anybody move the ball, and it reminded me of that Buffalo game. in the playoffs last year, where, they have these three weapons, and if Mixon gets rumbling, like they're as hard to stop as anybody when things are going right for them. So that was my big takeaway from yesterday. It was like, oh yeah, they've still got this in them, and the fact that they're coming off a bye and they can do that just makes me feel more confident that they're going to continue rolling into what we've acknowledged is a pretty darn tough stretch of schedule moving forward for them. But at one point we said, like, if they can end up 6-6, like they've still got a decent chance at the playoffs and they're feeling okay about themselves. I think 7-5 feels like the minimum now, and 8-4 is very possible. So, like where the Bengals are at a lot. Love the Joe Burrow pick. Love where he's at. Want to go defense, Kale?
Jackson, I do want to go defense. This is not only our first game ball in a losing effort, it's our first game ball to a non-player.
Okay.
The Washington Commanders defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio. Because, Jackson, stop the tush push. They stopped the tush push against the Eagles. Not just like a Daniel Jones tush push, not a Brock Purdy tush push. They stopped the tush push, and it's a big deal. This was a team that was one of the many coordinators who came out and said, I'll read the quote from NBC Sports. I would personally like to see it eliminated, not just because they run it better than anybody, although they do run it better than anybody, but I don't think that's a football play. I think it's a nice rugby play, and it's not what we're looking for in football. But until it's outlawed, we'll prepare for it and get ready to do our best to stop it. And stop it they did, Jackson. But, however, just like the famous old Jurassic Park movie, your defensive coordinators were so preoccupied with whether or not they could stop it, they didn't stop to think if they should stop it. Because the game gets sealed, Jackson, on some ad-libbing off of the tush push.
Yep. And you knew that was coming sooner. I'm surprised it took this long.
The DeAndre Swift fake tush push handoff counter run is
and that's obvious.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous and bad, and we don't need that. And maybe they get some like fake passing off the tush push. We get some like RPO work off the tush push. Motioning a man into the tush push to get more surprise tush push. Who knows? Jack Del Rio has opened Pandora's tush push box, and we don't know the horrors that will crawl out of it.
Yeah. That was the moment yesterday. Everyone has that moment where they're getting boat raced in fantasy, where they just throw their hands to the sky. That was 100% the moment for me, because I'm going to lose by 25 plus to an opponent who put up 154 this week, which is the most we've seen in my half-point PPR league this year. And it was already like not a great proposition for me to win this game, despite having AJ Brown, who's the gift that keeps on giving in fantasy football. And then that play happens, and my opponent has DeAndre Swift, and I'm just like, all right, I'm definitely getting destroyed this week. And then guess what? He also has Cameron Dicker on his team to just, really twist the knife at the end. So congratulations to my opponent for handing me my third straight fantasy loss this week. Definitely not still bitter. My defensive game ball. And you know what, Kale, I'm glad you brought back Tuesday morning reading. I actually had a quote for all of my, for a couple of my game balls this week, and I forgot to give my Will Levis quote. It was a very short quote. It was, Derrick Henry, maybe a guy you've heard of before in the NFL.
Good
offensive player of the year. Yeah. He just said, quote, he was balling, huh? There you go.
It was.
Pretty short and simple there.
All on the fourth rows.
Defensive game ball. Jermaine Pratt. Kale. He had a decent game otherwise, but this is just for one play, kind of like yours. Jermaine Pratt had it was basically like Brock Purdy threw the ball directly into Jermaine Pratt's hand, and you were just like, where'd the ball go? Oh, he caught it. Like one of the most impressive quick hands plays you'll see from anybody in football, let alone a guy who weighs, somewhere in the ballpark of 300 pounds. And then he also could have taken it back for a touchdown if he hadn't stumbled out of bounds with his initial momentum. So one of the more athletic things I've seen in recent football memory. And I'll give you a quote from another guy who's decent at football, as we've said, Joe Burrow, who I believe you did just in fact give an offensive game ball to. He said, quote, Jermaine's play in the red zone was unbelievable. It was one of the best defensive plays I've ever seen. He just needs to stay in bounds and go score next time too. So you know what? I get it. Twist the knife on your guy. he really could have taken that thing back if he hadn't put 1 foot out of bounds at the end of his little stumble there. But yeah, I mean, that play, you think about like what could happen. The Niners had just gotten down to 1st and goal at the 8-yard line, down by 7. So you're thinking about tie game, most explosive offense in the league for most of the year. Nope. Pratt shuts it down. Bengals go down and score, and all of a sudden they're just right back in control. So as much as we lauded the Bengals offense, this one specific defensive play absolutely could have swung the entire game.
Big Lou getting it done. Can I throw one actual defensive game ball in there? This is honorary, but I forgot to throw it in.
Hey, you can do whatever you want.
Jamal Adams had one of the best heads-up plays I've ever seen by a defensive player in quite some time. Because, Jackson, as he's coming off the edge to blitz PJ Walker with very little time left on the clock. I'll get you the exact stats, but yeah, 3rd and 3 on the Cleveland 41, just before the 2-minute warning. Jackson, Jamal Adams headbutts a pass. Full on, like, goes up with his hands, but like doesn't get his hands in front of it, just hits it with his head, and it pops the ball straight up. Julian Love comes down with it for what eventually sets up the 5-play game-winning drive for the Seattle Seahawks. And that was just, if we're just talking about singular cool plays to secure people game balls, stopping a tush push was one. The Jermaine Pratt should have been pick 6 was one. The headbutt pass breakup, the HBPBU, if you will, that was fun.
That's going to catch.
Yeah, that one's going to catch on.
That's sticking. Yeah, no qualms with that. Leader in sacks yesterday, if I had this correct and I'm not missing anybody, was Jonathan Greenwood of the Houston Texans with 2.5 sacks in a losing effort. So no game ball there, but shout out other individual efforts. And you could say Jalen Ramsey as well for returning and picking off Mac Jones, but I'm not going to because that was the worst Mac Jones throw I've seen all year.
Oh, you mean Jonathan Greenard? Oh yeah, dude, the Mac Jones one was tough. Dude, I'm so upset for Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, that one stings.
It is nice to know
back to tank season.
It is nice to know that, like the Vikings, the tank conversation has just been taken out of New England's hands.
Yeah,
and they can move like Uche, or they can like flip a couple guys at the deadline.
You know who would have been great to flip though? Kendrick Bourne.
What is going to be interesting is I'm very curious to see how this. There's been a lot of clamoring for the running back market, and the Bills just signed playoff Lenny during this pod. So Leonard Fournette is a Bill. I'm going to early say my head scratcher there and just say, he's that better than James Cook and Latavius Murray? What they've been doing for you, I guess. But
former 4th overall pick,
former Super Bowl champion. But the running back market's going to be really weird. I know Cleveland's looking for a running back. I know Baltimore's looking for a running back. I know there are a few teams out there that just need, like, that think that is their difference maker. And Ezekiel Elliott's been good. And Ramondre Stevenson has not been that good. So I wonder if they're going to be willing to get off of Ezekiel Elliott to, like, get some draft capital, but kind of bottom out their run game with Mondre, I guess, Ty Montgomery, and they traded Pierre Strong, so I can't say Pierre Strong anymore. I really don't know the Patriots running back situation beyond those two. It's been that long.
It's not worth thinking about.
I'm gonna
other things
real
to
hard.
build mental energy too this week, like our special teams game balls, Kale, which I may have tipped earlier by talking about my fantasy woes, but Cameron Dicker, there wasn't like a game breaking special teams play this week. Maybe there were a couple long punt returns, Cowboys blocked punt, safety, but I'm gonna go Cameron Dicker because holy cow. We talk about all these kickers that get drafted, Kale. Jake Moody, 3rd round. Back in the day, Cade York drafted 4th round, I believe. The Patriots drafted the 3%er in the 5th round a few years ago. All these kickers end up getting drafted. Famously, Roberto Aguayo. Cameron Dicker, who was like one of the better college kickers we've seen recently, didn't get drafted. Concerns about the leg. Goes to 2 practice squads, the Ravens and the Rams, who, they had kickers. There were other teams that didn't bring him into the practice squad. Then Jake Elliott gets hurt last year, and the Eagles used Dicker for a week. He doesn't miss anything. The Chargers, finally, I think I can't even remember what terrible kicker the Chargers finally kicked the tires on and gave up last year. But they bring him in. He's missed 2 kicks his entire career. One of them was last year, and I didn't look up the yardage on it, but his only miss this year of any kind has been from 53 yards. He is a career 40 of 40 on extra points, which, that doesn't happen anymore. People miss extra points all the dang time, but he doesn't. And he's 11 of 12 on field goals this year, 32 of 34 in his career. He's like young Justin Tucker at this point, and nobody wanted him, which blows my mind because we take all these kickers in the 4th and 5th round now, and none of them amount to long-term starter. And Cameron Dicker was just there for anybody to have midway through last season.
Kickers are weird, man.
Very.
Like, I'm sorry I don't have more on that. It's just like they take a long time to develop. By the time you usually the draft pick starts to actually develop, it's time to pay the guy. Because it takes so long to develop them. So it's a weird market on that front, and you just don't ever know. Like, you really don't. And I'm not like...
You know what else that's weird is because college kicking is so weird. Because you got the wide-ass
so inconsistent. Yeah.
Yeah. And the wider field goal posts. So some of it is easier, some of it is harder.
I just don't know where, how the evaluation process changes. Like, how can
I've got to think that we're moving towards the baseball aspect of kicking, where we should be measuring kick accuracy, kick power, kick spin rate on the data side of things, very very granularly take these guys to an evaluation and get their measurables, and that's how we judge kicking in the future. I've got to think that's where it's headed.
I guess you have a whole separate kick combine and you figure stuff out there, because we have so much other data on skill position players and just every player that kind of matters. But kicking obviously matters. Kicking, we've always talked about special teams being that 1/8, and the 1/8 has been very meaningful this year. It feels like it swung a bunch of games. It swung the Giants game that we'll talk about. But here's a very good example. I'll give you my special teams game ball. Jackson, it is Ryan Stonehouse, the real MVP of the Tennessee Titans win over the Atlanta Falcons.
First of all, Ryan Stonehouse in Football Outsiders, now the DVOA diaspora circle, has long been a hero, and he's only been in the league for a year and a half at this point, but a hero nonetheless.
Jackson, on Sunday, the Tennessee Titans punted 8 times for 420 yards. 6 of those were pins inside the 20.
Jesus.
Collectively, the Atlanta Falcons scored 3 points on drives following Cincinnati punts. This was a good day. This was a good day for Ryan Stonehouse, pinning this team deep. The Falcons' points came off of the Titans' opening drive fumble, the opening half field goal drive, the one time that they scored off a punt, and then answering the Tennessee Titans punt or answering the Tennessee Titans touchdown, where Nick Folk buried him for a touchback, and that was one of Levis's good drives. But all the other times they were scoring off of, or sorry, not Levis's drives, one of Heineke's drives. My bad. But that was like every time they scored was pretty much answering a Titans touchdown or like capitalizing off a big Titans mistake. So the fact that when Levis could not perform and they kind of had to punt, Stonehouse put this defense in an awesome situation. That's a holistic win. That is a good win for a football team.
He's the man. Is he? I don't think he ended up getting the record last year, but he was challenging for the record of yards per punt attempt, which usually goes down as the year goes along due to weather. But he's a boomer, and not a baby boomer. He's a football boomer. He booms that football. So the other thing I have on Stonehouse would be a name that works at any NFL position and work really well. Ryan Stonehouse could be the best linebacker in the league. He could be the best tight end in the league.
It's all
great
name
defensive end, but like punter, like if you're a Stonehouse as a punter, like that works. That really works for me. So I'm happy to have him in my game ball collection. Can the Titans not just wear the Oilers uniforms again on Thursday? Because like night and day difference, intimidation factor, interest factor in me watching the game, and would be the uniform game of the week next week if they played the Steelers in those Oilers uniforms. So
I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're the uniform game this week.
How?
I don't know. There weren't a ton of great games to choose from this week, in my opinion. Rams, the Saints Colts one was good. I actually, for all intents and purposes, didn't hate Eagles Commanders.
Commanders with all burgundy was very confusing to me. I couldn't tell if I liked it or not. I think it was like overall
like red, green, and gold.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but man, Jackson, you're a uniform guy and you're very particular in your uniforms. Where'd you stand on all white pants in Titans Falcons? Everyone had white pants on. And I liked it because it was just like, it was red, blue, black, white, super easy, very simple. But all white pants was the thing I noticed. And I kind of liked it, I kind of didn't.
For me, it's fine because they're pants with trim. And the reason it wasn't the uniform game for me is I just hate everything about this iteration of the current Falcons uniforms.
So nice.
But
so good.
Yeah, he's always been in on the the giant ATL and everything. But I'm totally fine with like two teams wearing white pants. Where I get, in my feels about uniforms these days, there's all these teams wearing pants with no stripes on them, and specifically the white ones. The Commanders do it all the time. The Saints are doing it now. The Jags do it all the time. The Lions do it sometimes. Like, why are we wearing unmarked, unstriped pants in today's NFL?
You almost hit him with the "what are we doing" for not wearing striped pants?
Yeah. If you can't be wearing pants in an NFL game that I could go find at Dick's Sporting Goods.
You can't tell me these aren't the best. You can't tell me these aren't the best Falcons uniforms, though.
Well, I can.
Like non-throwbacks.
I guess, but that's basically saying like, what's the best Rebecca Black song? Like, you don't have to have a good one.
Friday wasn't that bad.
It's bad, dude. How about I do just an easy layup slam dunk uniform game? Not a good football game by any stretch of the imagination, but Packers Vikings in Lambeau just elicits so many good football vibes for me. It's just, that takes me back to any year of my football watching career. You can put Vikings Packers in Lambeau Field and I'm into it. So probably the worst iteration of that matchup we've seen in terms of overall intrigue and play on the field, but the uniform still hit 100% for me.
Yeah, the purple hits. Purple hits hard.
Purple hits hard against another team with yellow trim. It's like we've talked about in the past when they play the Chargers. It's like the yellow cancels itself out, and then the purple is just like real strong. So
Pops.
it was sick.
Pops for sure.
Head scratchers?
You start, Jackson. You might also finish because this might be such an all-encompassing game that I just let you have it, man.
My head scratcher is MetLife Stadium, Jets Giants. Just the entirety, start to finish of that game. How did this happen? How did we get here? Of course, it happened at MetLife Stadium, especially, given the history of our show and, the bad football we've always seen at that stadium. Now the fact that I live within a mile of MetLife Stadium just to add a wrench into it. But if something like this were going to happen, that stadium is 100% where it had to happen. And we kick it off with teams were a combined 4 of 34 on third downs. That's the worst in any game since 2009 by both teams. The Giants, Kale, you mentioned Tommy DeVito early in the show. The Giants had -9 net passing yards. How? That has to be a fake number. Tommy DeVito now, the negative is because of sack yards for the most part, because both Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito took 2 sacks each. But it should be noted that Tommy DeVito went 2 of 7 on his pass attempts for -1 yards. He did not have positive forward pass yardage in his game.
Tommy DeVito at one point in this game had an ADOT of -2.2. I've never seen a negative ADOT for a quarterback.
Yeah. No, at that point, why not just let Saquon play quarterback and do wild stuff? Because if you're not going to let your quarterback throw forward passes, just put somebody in who can rumble forward and take the snaps. Saquon can throw -2.2 yards behind the line of scrimmage if you want him to. I'm sure of it. So
yeah, teams aren't prepared for it. You'd arguably have a better shot.
Would have rather seen that. Do some triple option stuff with Saquon and Jalen Hyatt and wish Darren Waller was still healthy at that point in the game. But regardless, there's still much more to talk about. The Giants, by the way, had the lowest net pass yards in a game by any team since the 2000 Cleveland Browns. Probably not a team you want to be compared to historically. 24 punts in this game, Kale. 24, including 15 in the first half alone. And not only were there 24 punts, 17 of those 24 were 3 and outs. Most punts in any game in a 25-year span. So congratulations to the Jets and the Giants for that one. The Giants, then let's get into some situational stuff, because this is already the worst game you could imagine. But it could have just ended 10-7 with 23 punts, and or 13-7 even, because the Giants were about to kick a field goal to end it. They had a 35-yard field goal attempt, a choice to kick one on 4th and 1 with 28 seconds left. Yeah, you should make the kick. You should absolutely make the kick. Graham Gano misses it. He's very, downtrodden in the post game. I missed a 35-yarder. I can't be doing that. Why don't you just go for the 4th and 1, dude? There's 28 seconds left. Just go for the 4th and 1. And then if you don't get it, you're right in the same spot as if you missed the field goal. But the game is over if you get it. And instead, we know what happened. But
I want to remind listeners that this was the second 4th and 1 field goal that they missed on the day.
Yep.
It wasn't good.
Both shorties. And let's not forget that this game was out of context, that's already a questionable decision. Do you kick it? Do you go for it? It was pissing down rain. So just keep the ball on the ground and pick up the yard. And if not, we're in the same spot and you're actually in a better spot because, okay, so they missed the field goal. Now they're 8 yards closer to field goal range. Whereas if you get stuffed on 4th and 1, you have to gain 8 more yards. Even so, there's no way they should have lost this game after missing the field goal. And there's now 24 seconds left. The Giants are the 25-yard line. So they've got to go, plus or minus 50 yards to feel like they're in comfortable field goal range in the pouring rain. First play of that drive is a 29-yard pass play with an offsides call. So the pass is caught in bounds and the clock stops. And all of a sudden they're right there at the edge of field goal range. then there's the crazy Zach Wilson scramble play to Allen Lazard, and they somehow get it spiked in like 5 seconds, quickest spike I've seen all season. What happened? It was the worst late game defensive clock management I've seen. And to top it all off, then in overtime, it's another 3 and out. So there's your 24th punt of the game. Jets go right down, kick a field goal. Greg Zuerlein misses the upright by 2 fingernails. And Brian Dable, I think the image of the year for me so far is Brian Dable's sad, wet helmet spike in super slow-mo, because this is a guy that won Coach of the Year last year, and I feel like his year this year has just been defined by anger and like public displays of disgust at his own team, almost to sort of insinuate none of this is my fault. And at some point, it's got to start catching up to him, because his management of that game yesterday, even with a non-passer at quarterback, was reprehensible. And I think that was kind of when it all came to a head, and we will remember that as, the worst loss of what's been a terrible season.
It's really funny that the entire year I've associated that with Robert Saleh. Just him, like sideline shots of Robert Saleh getting every single 0 to 10 of the choose the face that best reflects how much pain you're in. Or the emotion chart with every possible reaction. It is just varying degrees of pain and disgust and anger for Robert Saleh at all times. With some occasional moments of happiness, but man, that he's got just a thankless job. But yeah, Brian Dable, bad week for him. You're gonna figure something out. We've seen these weird cases of hyper regression the other way for the 2 biggest outlier teams of last year, one being Minnesota, one being New York. Minnesota started figuring it out, and at least they materially improved. They did some funky stuff on defense. Brian Flores is kind of throwing the house at teams with all of his blitzing packages. Kirk Cousins, even without Justin Jefferson, had been balling out with KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison. Dable added, got all his wide receivers back, got Darren Waller, retained Saquon Barkley, and just hasn't been able to do anything. It's night and day. The most promising win they've had all year was the one against the Commanders, where Tyrod took over and they nearly beat the Bills in a moral victory. It's been tough, man. I don't know where the Giants go from here, but there's a gross number of teams just sitting at 2 wins right now.
2 wins, 3 wins, that whole assortment. We can say a couple of them might still be trying, specifically the Rams, but who knows with health with them. But the rest of them, what reason do the Giants have for not tanking? What reason do any of these Pats, Broncos, Packers, all of these teams have for not tanking? We might be able to throw the Raiders into that mix soon, which is fun, because guess what? The Giants are at the Raiders this coming week, which high alert for sicko game of the week with the Dable, McDaniels, Darren Waller revenge game matchup. I'm actually really excited for that one. So that's what kind of NFL sicko I am. I'm stoked for Giants Raiders next week.
The best football game, the worst football game is better than league average products for some professional sports. And it can get real gross in a fun way. But you have a mental illness. You are a sick and twisted individual, and I have lost a small amount of respect for you for getting excited.
Get out of here,
Giants Raiders. Have some decency, man. Go for a walk.
You have some decency. You give me a friggin' head scratcher.
No. I wanted to
dereliction of duty. This is I
wanted to do it. It's not a dereliction of duty. I want to put Giants Jets on a pedestal of grossness. There wasn't too many crazy head scratching plays. The losses that we had were just we've dissected all the losses we had, and there was no what were they thinking? Is it head scratching to not bench Desmond Ridder sooner? Sure. Is it head scratching to not engage in the Deshaun Watson deal? Yes. Listen, if Deshaun Watson wasn't a sex pest, the Browns would never have, or he would have never sat out. Browns would never have made that trade. We would know that Deshaun Watson was a fraud. They'd have a different answer at quarterback right now. Hell, they might have Baker at quarterback right now, still just trying to duke it out. And it would just objectively be better than whatever it is here. Like we could do head scratching domino effects all day, but I feel pretty resolute in my answers for this week of the teams that had questions about where they're headed know where they're headed now. It's either up or down. And I don't have a lot of questions. I'm pretty sound with my decision making midway through the season. It's questionable how the NFL allowed Jets Giants to happen the way it did. But no, I don't have large here, head scratcher. Why did Jack Del Rio try to stop the tush push? What horrors has he wrought on the league? I don't know. I don't have a head scratcher, Jackson. My bad. I got a good special teams game ball. You get one or the other from me.
I got one that, we haven't really talked about this one yet. We've mostly come at this team from the Desmond Ridder angle of things. Arthur Smith is making a really good early case for Irie Harris Bozo of the Year award. And yesterday, he had his second best tight end throw a pass to his third best tight end in a goal-to-go situation with Bijan Robinson not on the field.
That's called being nice with it. It's called being badass. Kyle Pitts was on the field. This was either 03 or 13 personnel. And Kyle Pitts was not involved. He was a blocking tight end. This dude rules.
Arthur Smith is, we have he's had open comments about how he doesn't care about people's fantasy lineups. He had the Bijan Robinson, what even happened last week. His sideline faces are up there in terms of funny coach sideline faces in recent history. I'm looking at Mike McCarthy, Freddie Kitchens, a lot of good candidates for that one. And he is right up there with dumb, perplexed head coach sideline faces. I don't have much to say. I think Arthur Smith is, quickly emerging in the Bozo of the Year conversation.
Don't think he's a bozo at all. I think he's a very smart man. I think he's fine. he's a fine head coach with a bad quarterback situation, and he's creative. He's trying his best.
Creative genius, Arthur Smith. This is the time of the show when we do a Monday Night Football preview, and the only question I have about this game is, does Amon-Ra St. Brown have the shits going into this game, or is he able to play football tonight?
I don't elaborate.
He popped up on the injury report with illness yesterday out of nowhere. And, if he doesn't play, then maybe the Raiders have a chance in this game. But if Amon-Ra's out there, how are the Raiders, poopy defense going to stop Amon-Ra and the rest of this Lions offense?
Raiders win. Raiders just win. That's how this works. Remember how flippant we were about San Francisco? And Minnesota kind of beat them handily. Who knows?
I'm doubling down on the flippancy. I'm interested to see what the Raiders offense looks like with ostensibly healthy Jimmy G back in the fold. Specifically, I'm interested to see
I would just rather have AOC at this point.
Well, I'm interested to see if Davante Adams can start looking like Davante Adams again. And I guess he's not getting traded because I guess the Raiders still think they're in this thing. But football is just better when Davante Adams is wide receiver one instead of, 6 catches for 45 yards like he has been the last couple weeks. So I'd like to see him return to form, and I'd like to see Amon-Ra St. Brown not have the shits and play football tonight. Those are my wishes.
Jackson, there's so many cheap seats this week.
Well, it's your turn. I haven't even looked at them yet, so it's your turn. Lay them on me.
Okay, Jackson, do we want to do cheap seats or mid seats? Because we can either do a hard cap under 60, or if you want to just go 60 to 100, there's some fun ones, but there's a lot of slop this week, and there's a lot of double-digit prices.
I would like
majority of double-digit prices, I'd say.
Yeah, I would like to keep it in the double. I think we've, it's trying times in the world. We've got to be a little frugal. We've got to stick to cheap seats for once. Throw me the same teams that are usually in cheap seats. I don't care. We've got to get back to our roots in this segment. It's okay. Cheap seats for the win.
We've got 5 under 60, so we've got a good sample size here. I'll go from increasing price. $28. Hot start. Heading down to Charlotte to watch Colts Panthers.
I like that one.
$37. NRG Stadium, Bucks Texans. $43. You're visiting our buddy Irie Harris. Cardinals at Browns. Cardinals made their way on there again. $55. You get to see your hero ball on Thursday night. Tennessee Titans at Pittsburgh Steelers. Your 2 favorite offenses in the league right now. And the big one, the $59 expensive one.
Mm-hmm.
You're saving money getting the cheapest food in football. Minnesota at Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Only one primetime game in there for the cheap. But no, the $28 was a $4.05. But it's a lot of 1 o'clock slot.
We've first of all, I'm going to throw out that most expensive one first. And I consider it for a moment because I want to see Heineke and I feel like he should play this week, but I can't watch Jaren Hall. I don't there's some, backup / fill-in quarterbacks where you're like, all right, I'm interested to see where this goes. Tyrod Taylor, perfect example. He comes in the game. I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm not curious about Jaren Hall playing quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, nor am I curious about Nick Mullins if he ends up being the guy for them. So unfortunately, have to throw that one out. I'm also going to throw out, surprisingly, Steelers Titans because there's a freeze warning in Western Pennsylvania right now. And I don't want to be, it's not yet time to freeze our asses off at a football game. It's first couple days in November. I'm not prepared for that. So gonna also throw that one out. Tempted to go to Cleveland just for Irie Harris, but I think it's Bucks at Texans for me. Houston's got to be nice this time of year for one. That's like a borderline loser leaves town game. That's one of those teams is going to be 4-4 and feeling pretty good about themselves, and the other one's going to be 3-5 and just lost back-to-back very winnable games. And we're kind of talking about them in a different way. So I don't think either of those teams is good, but that's the most impactful game of the ones you just presented me, and I'm going to go with it.
I think you are overemphasizing how winnable Tampa Bay's Thursday night game against Buffalo was.
Oh yeah, you're right. I was more thinking about their previous game against Atlanta.
I'll take. Atlanta and Minnesota was just fun because, if we're in the spirit of cheap seats, it's like Mercedes-Benz, cheapest stadium out there. You can eat like a king for $20.
You can not eat Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A is not open the one day of the week they play most football games.
It's so funny when it's open for just the college football championship when they play it there once every 3 years.
Yeah, or the Thursday night game against the Panthers that always seems to happen when both teams are 5-9.
But I think I'd do my cheap seats as either Cleveland or Charlotte, and I'd go Charlotte. I would take the cheapest one. Carolina Colts, inexplicably, always a very close game. Colts have put together 2 very high scoring games, and Bryce Young's 1-0. Forget about the rest of it. He's 1-0.
There you are. That's what Dave Halbert, our Panthers fan mutual friend, said yesterday. Hey, he's 1-0.
He's 1-0.
I don't know where that is that an inside joke I'm missing? Did they say something about throwing out the entire rest of the season earlier this week, or are we just saying it's like the old trope, series doesn't start until a road team wins the first game. It's like Bryce Young's career doesn't start until he wins the first game.
Yeah, exactly. No, you got one under your belt. That's all you need.
Perfect.
Build from there.
That's it,
You
man.
got a bad Colts defense that just constantly puts together barn burners.
Why is the Colts offense so good? That's the like they were 12th in offensive DVOA coming into the week, and like I get that like since Taylor's come back, they've had 2 quality running backs on the field for most plays, and you've seen some more out of their receiving core. But like, why are they scoring 30 points a game with Gardner Minshew in there? I can't quite figure that one out yet. Against good defenses too. Saints and Browns.
What's the best? There's been a lot. We've seen a lot of backups, Jackson. Is that the best backup situation in the league?
Yeah, I mean, Tyrod's been good in a small sample size and in a tougher offense to maneuver with, I feel, and tougher defenses playing against. But yeah, I mean, I think Gardner Minshew's like kind of king of the backups in a lot of ways. And he's not going to necessarily win you these tight games, but if you want watchability, I mean, Minshew's your guy, because he's also going to throw a couple horrendous picks in there to go along with the explosive plays. But it's fun to just watch somebody, we forget this is a man that, hit his hand with a hammer to try and get a red shirt year. This is a man who's quite literally willing to do anything for the game of football. And football's been pretty good to him in return.
I still just want to watch an Eric Bieniemy coached Jacoby Brissett team really badly.
Well, you're not gonna. You're gonna watch Sam Howell take 46 more sacks this year.
I don't want to watch a man go to the hospital. I want to watch good football.
Tell that to the Giants, man. It's been like that every week. So you're telling the wrong NFC East team in that case.
Let's just figure something out. Just get Jacoby top 10 DVOA last year. It's better than Deshaun Watson.
For real? Well, you plead for Jacoby Brissett. I'll plead for the Steelers and Titans to both wear throwback uniforms on Thursday night, and we can leave it at that. It's been a good week. Got a lot of good football coming up next week. For Kale, I am Jackson. We will see you next Tuesday.
See you. Oh, I took a bad angle. I tried to go across.